Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
يعتقد أنا شيء ما داستين ينشأ أظن أن نشأت تجيء نشان ده ونغني باششين كذا كان داشن على دو توتو داشن شيء أصلا نشأ and I see tell so that nasha and I'm Amanda Singer, just mentioning plans. I'm zooming in from Porcupine, Arizona. I'm also the co-host with Kimberly Moore-Salas for the fourth trimester Arizona um, IPSV, which is the Indigenous Parent Support Village. And just a quick reminder, can you all please put your zip codes in the chat box? And that's just for grant writing purposes or grant reporting purposes. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Alan.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Yate, Shay Alan King, Shay. As just launched its Kanye Buses chain, a doi glean just a chay chana zini additional. So my name is Alan King. I'm Zuni Pueblo in Navajo, and I've been residing here in Phoenix for wow, 20 years. I'm originally from Idaho. I'm sorry, I'm originally from New Mexico, and I was raised in Idaho. And Yeah, I've been in the valley for quite some time, and I've got to know the community very well. I'm really a farm boy at heart, a res kid, and but this farm boy somehow, some way, found his way and started working with CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and um, I just fell in love with helping people. I helped my first elderly back in 2005, and I've been on a mission since. And from there, from CMS, I learned about Medicare and learned about how insurances work and what's needed in the community, from Part B, supplies and outpatient programming and inpatient programming for Medicare. And from there, I found my interest in wanting to help the population more. I started working with Native Health, and that's when I ran into Kim back in 2010. Holy smokes, 15 years. And been helping communities since. From then I worked with IHS and um, and from there lab work. I've done labs. I've worked in behavioral health. I'll go into a little bit more of that later on in my presentation today. And um, yeah, so I'll just go ahead and I guess I'll start sharing the screen if I need permission to that. Right, can you guys see my screen? Hey, awesome. So, um, what I'm discussing here today is about bridging accountability and addressing the Access American Indian Health Program fraud through a lens of, not only through a professional perspective and a traditional counselor's perspective, uh, but through leadership and through, different views and lenses that a lot of people aren't talking about. And I want to just give an insight of my perspective, and what I experienced as well, experience it with others in the community, co-workers, other leaderships, organizations, tribal organizations, and people, really in recovery and people who are grassroots and all the efforts that we're doing to, make a better community for our people, but also where we live, especially here in the valley. And I just wanted to go over that and, share a little bit of insight on that, and give some information that I believe a lot of people need to be informed, and support and encourage and, just remind a lot of us who are out there we're impacted from this fraud, who are still impacted from this whole fraud, that we're there for each other, and again, with what I'm going over here, it's not directly or intel directly towards any organization. I'm not um, going after, belittling people or anything. It's just what I saw and what I witnessed, and hopefully we can have a better understanding of how to, come together and put our differences down, or put our similarities together for our people and for the community. Um, so again, so again, my name is Alan King. I've been in the Valley for a while, and I have a very thorough background in healthcare. I've been working in medical healthcare for the past, wow, I would say close to 20 years since I've been here in the Valley. Um, no insurance is in and out, understanding how Medicare and how private insurances work. I was here when the Obamacare started. I was again there when the drug plan started with Medicare. And for some reason, I just understand it. And then I moved on to the urban programming with Native Health. I worked with them for close to 6 years. Uh, Again, part of that whole efforts that they do to help out the refugee population, homeless populations, veterans, and everybody in between with Native Health. They're a great program. Um, and then I moved on to IHS, Indian Health Services. I worked in Chinle, and I also worked with the Phoenix Indian Medical Center. And then I found myself working for a lab. And during that time is right when COVID hit. And I was part of the whole efforts to move and implement testing sites all through the valley. And we actually went out of state as well. We ended up helping tribal members out in South Dakota, Utah, Colorado, California. So it was really good in doing that. And then I moved on from the lab world and moved on to behavioral health. And with behavioral health, I worked with several companies. Then I also started my own company. But currently today, I'm a consultant. I've started Collective Empowerment Solutions to talk about these things and to help organizations with cultural diversity and inclusion, help organizations with management analysis, revenue cycle management. I also am a certified facilitator with White Bison, so I help in that in that area as well. So I kind of bring a modern business atmosphere, include with culture, because that's what I truly believe in. I believe in all of it. I believe in our culture. I believe in science. I believe in evidence based. Um, and all of it combined together, we all have our cup of tea to put into a patient's efforts, and they can learn from all of us. So, um, but the purpose of today again is addressing gaps, communication barriers, and accountability and failures that happen with the Access AHP fraud. Um, and then also proposing solutions rooted to leadership, advocacy, and recovery as well. So let's get started. So again, and then a big shout out to again for Kim for putting this together and asking me to be part of this with Travel Indemnity, Amanda Singh with Navajo Breastfeeding Coalition, and also Camille Goulding with Fourth Trimester for putting this on. I really appreciate you guys and you know making an effort to get this information out to the community. So overview of Access AIHP fraud. Um, you know, this happened, which targeted the Native American communities with the population who right now are most vulnerable. Um, Going back in history with our tribal members, we're one of the very last of the communities that are experiencing drugs and alcohol. And that's a historical history of how alcohol and drugs were introduced to the Native American population. That's why we're so addictive to it because it's not part of our history. It's not part of our culture. Um, when you're introduced to something new and your body reacts to it, boom, you get addicted very quickly. So that's why our native population is where it's at in its state, and especially with the lack of resources that are in our tribe here in the urban programs, you know. Um, but the fraud impacted the Native American community severely here in Arizona. Here's some other facts that actually have been happening. If you haven't done your research on this, but this actually started up north first, up in Montana and South Dakota. Up in South Dakota, the Medicaid system started slowly depleting, where inpatient, outpatient programs started going away. The Medicaid system started getting more restricted on how they're getting their programs done and how they're um, it just started depleting. So that it then also moved into Idaho, moved into Washington. It happened in California. Now it happened here in Arizona. And this has actually been going on for quite a few years. And is the thankfulness to social media, thankfulness to the community that this was finally brought out to get people's attention that our people are being targeted for fraud. And what the fraud meant was that they people were recruiting Native Americans from the rural areas, also here in the urban areas, to outpatient programs, inpatient programs, and partially hospitalized programming. And with that programming, there was a sense of how to get the billing paid for. So a lot of things were happening where organizations were um, double billing. They were billing when people aren't were even in the program themselves. They were billing for patients who were deceased. And this has been going on. I think the furthest I've tracked this was back in 2016. So there more information is coming out with Access. I've been monitoring the state website and talking with other consultants within the state of Arizona and Access, and it opened up a whole bigger thing that was actually going on. Um, but yeah, the target for the Native Americans here in the Valley, especially with Arizona, with the 22 tribes, is very severe. They were recruiting clients from all over the reservations and including out of state clients as well. So what this did was the fraud impacted the tribes and the lack of trust, disruption of healthcare, toll on patients and families. Um, what the fraud had did was recruited Native Americans into these programs. A lot of them were um, brought in without pretty much knowledge of what type of programming they were being pulled into. And what I mean by that is um, that white vans were pulling into the rural areas. They're also pulling up into the urban areas as well. They were being lured into vans to go into facilities, promised this, they were promised that. Um, and from there, the impacts with the tribes, which I very support right now, is that they're very thoroughly monitoring people who are coming into the valleys or coming into the reservations as well. Um, a lot of patients and tribal members had are still missing. A lot of tribal members have resulted in death, and you know it it's very heartbreaking. I get emotional about this because it's our family members, it's our people. Um, but I wanted to backtrack a little bit. You know, I think one of the key things that's missing here that people don't really understand, which I was a big advocate when I used to work for Native Health, and that's understanding AHP itself, the American Indian Health Program, is in other terms called a fee for service. So what is it? Um, Access offers a program called American Indian Health Program, and it is benefits to Native Americans in Arizona. And it operates as a fee-for-service program. So this is not an insurance; it's a program. And with this program, what happens with this program is providers, which are doctors, pharmacists, as long as they participate in this program, a patient can go to this program. A provider can bill for this patient. And so that was one of the ways in how this fraud scheme happened. Once you're on a preferred provider list for this program, you are able to bill for it. So once that word got out, that's how people started luring people into these programs because there was a billing code that was used where providers had free reign of how they could bill, meaning that, oh, for today, I could bill for $600. Oh, today I can bill for $1,200 because it was part of a program and Medicaid had those resources to provide that services. So once that got out, um, it expanded like crazy. Um, you know, the other similar program that's just like this is Medicare. Medicare is also a fee-for-service program. But when you think of Medicare and you think of the United States, any hospital, clinic, or provider that participates in a fee-for-service program can accept Medicare. That's how easy it is to, render revenue off of a patient who's on a fee-for-service program. So if you think of the United States, think of Medicare. Any doctor, any provider can, participate in a fee-for-service program. Now, when we go back to the American Indian Health Program, think of the state of Arizona. Any doctor, any provider, any clinic, any outpatient, any urgent program, as long as they participate in a fee-for-service program, you can bill for the AIHP program. And this is, I believe, one of the reasons why, you know, how our tribal members were lured and targeted because of this program. Again, I am not bashing access for all the efforts that I think the state of Arizona has the most wonderful, wonderful Medicaid system for the tribes. I just think it needs to be monitored a little bit more, you know, um, because of this program. And for tribes and for the Indian Health Services, Native Health programs, I mean, just everybody in between. If you're a patient advocate, if you're a case manager, providing this information and teaching our tribal members about AHP and how it works, you know, letting you know their patient rights. I think that's where, we can help out with a lot of things. But this is one of the main reasons that the fraud system happened. Um, and being educated more about how this program works, I believe uh, this would help, us in the long run. Those who are looking into how to prevent this again is learning about the insurance system. The insurance system is tied into other insurance programs. Other than AHP, there's the Medicare managed care. There's the managed care programs as well, like United Healthcare, Mercy Care, which the Native American population can go and choose those insurances as well. But those are regular insurance programs or regular insurance policies, I should say. So those operate a little bit more different. They have providers that you can only see and only stay in those networks. Very different from the AHP program. Very different. So just a little information on that. I think that's one of the biggest things that I believe was lacking here in the Valley, uh, especially with the programming. When I was part of some of the behavioral health systems and behavioral health organizations that I worked for in the past, this is some of the things that I made sure our staff were taught. Some of the things that I made sure our case managers were aware of. Um, and the reason why is because of communication, right? There's a lot of critical gaps between providers, patients, and the judicial system. One of the biggest things that I advocated for when not only sitting in with medical staff or a licensed counselor or a CEO or owner of a program, uh, one of the biggest things that we have to understand as people who are in this field, where is this patient coming from? You know, as I sit here with, great people who are there out in the valley or out here in Phoenix or out there on the reservations, who do work in this field, we understand what ROI means. We understand what SMI means. We understand what fourth trimester means, right? But when you have a patient who's um, dealing with, their detoxing or they're craving that next alcohol, that next drink, or they've been on a binge for 6 days or even sometimes 6 months, and they come into your program, or if they just were riding a bike and they fell over and they broke their arm and they're bleeding like crazy, and you're bringing up this medical terminology, you know, and you're from the reservation, you're not going to understand that. You know, you're not going to understand what release of information is, what an ROI is. You're not going to understand what OP means or IOP or PHP, and there's a lot of communication gaps that happen between what was happening when patients were coming into these facilities and they were signing things left and right, um, but those are some of the things that I believe happened, with with the system. Um, the other things that happened too, that I also witnessed as well, was when organizations do open up and they are, wholeheartedly trying to help clients from all over, whether it's Native Americans or the Polynesian community or a Filipino community, um, you know, especially with the Native American system, that not all tribes are the same and not all referrals are the same. So what I mean by that is we had a client that came into our facility, and our intake person who got the call mentioned that this person came from this tribe. Okay, cool. We got the referral, we got the patient in, and when we contacted our referral source said, we didn't refer this client to you guys. They are from our tribe, but we didn't refer them. So what we had to do was create a policy for our intake to ask them, what referral source are you referring to and where are they coming from? So we have to narrow it down. Are they getting referred from the judicial system, from a tribal wellness court? Are they getting referred from a social worker? Are they getting referred from the behavioral health department? Are they getting referred from the ICWA? Are they getting, there's different entities that are part of a tribe. So that it is coming from the tribe, but it's not coming from the referral source. So a lot of these things happened. And it's unfortunate when this did happen that a lot of patients that did come through the system, they were SMI, severely mentally ill. And when they got to the facility, which is an outpatient program, a lot of patients are again referred out because they don't qualify for that program because they are at a different level. And there was a lot of that happened, because of the miscommunication, because of there's another thing, what we call dumping, which meant that facilities or referral sources, they had clients who are, we call them frequent flyers, meaning they come in all the time in the treatment programs, but sometimes they're coached to what they to say what they need to say to qualify for a program. And those are some of the things that we did catch, and it's unfortunate that the accountability on that part was heartbreaking. um you know the importance of accountability, from healthcare providers, law enforcement, tribal leaders, and the community, and even patients, right? um when you get a healthcare facility who's not talking to the judicial system, or they're not talking to their tribal leaders for one patient, a patient can get lost. And that's what happened. And I witnessed that, because we had a client that came into our facility, um, had all uh, mentioned all the right things that they needed to qualify for the pre-assessments. And once we got them in, within 2 days, this client was walking around with a knife, which we don't know where they got it from, and was talking about, bombing the president and doing all these things. And we had to quickly diagnose this client as a SMI, severely mentally ill, with a dual diagnosis, right? Or not that diagnosis. Um, I can't remember what the term is, but so when we referred this patient out and we called the family, we called the referral source, the patient has rights. The patient did leave the facility, and the patient did end up at another facility, which was actually, unfortunately, a fraudulent company. And, when we talk about accountability, you know, I think it lies on everybody, you know, um, including myself. Where did I go wrong? I think about, like, how could I have trained my case manager a little bit more better? How could we train our business development, our recruitment staff? How do we get people to really go into these facilities and train and talk about these hard talks? Because somewhere along the line, this could have been prevented. And it's fortunate that they did find a client. They did get this client back to their reservation. They found them in time. But what if, you know? Um, and the importance of the accountability is not to to take the blame, or it's just, it shows empathy, and it shows that your organization is making an effort to make it right. you know um, it fosters trust, and it deteriorates that fraud. um, you know and by accountability, both on the patient side, our healthcare system, our tribal leaders, and our community. And I get it, um, where you have community members who are advocating and they want the best for their family, and you have a client who's out there running and gunning and needing that fix, or needing that, they'll do anything to survive, because that's what they do, as an alcoholic and addict. you know um but yeah, but the accountability has to be at every level. And access, they're doing their part, and I believe access is trying to do every part to make it right. um but I think the accountability on them not monitoring who our providers are, um who is participating in these programs, monitoring the billing, that needs to be accountable. Um, I believe, our tribes, with IHS system, behavioral health system, needs to be accountable in their communications with how they refer. Organizations itself need to be accountable, you know, and also the people who committed the fraud need to be accountable, because they took advantage of us who are vulnerable. And a lot of us were, I guess, placed into another label that is frequently used right now, and it is called tokenism. and accountability of utilizing Native American advocates such as myself, and other people using our names and our backgrounds and us as Native Americans to lure other vulnerable Native Americans into your facility. I think that needs to be addressed and also needs to be out there. Tokenism, just to use cultural preference, use cultural enmities, just to gain revenue. I think that needs to be addressed as well. The accountability in that with social media, accountability in that with media. You know, it can be easily manipulated. Right now, with the new laws that went through with Medicaid and CMS and how they are now accepting uh, cultural facilitators to be billed under only IHS and urban programming and 630 programming. I'm very glad it stops there. It's not going out to private companies. It's not going to nonprofits. And I think that's a huge step to eliminate the fraud. And I think that's where CMS honestly watched how Arizona and how it went through, that they took that accountability and pulled it and gave it back to the sole control of the tribes. That's a very big step that they did. um, so, insights from my recovery and challenges from disrupted services. So I am in recovery myself, and the reason why I'm speaking on behalf of accountability from a patient is because I am a former patient, and I will always be a patient because I will never be cured from my addiction. I can stable my condition, and I have better spirituality. I have better mentors. I have like Kim and Amanda and Jerry and Audrey, people like you who are here to help our people, to help me maintain my sobriety. So if I backtrack and explain how I was in a program, that's gonna give you the insights of how a patient does act and react. You know, during my my addiction and during my alcoholism, I burned a lot of bridges. I was a manipulator, a liar, a cheat, and a thief. As they say in AA. And I had a lot of growing up to do. And that's not just with myself, but people who are in my lives. My wife, my kids, my family, my parents. My siblings, my former jobs. The judicial system. And if I didn't have my way, I made sure everybody else's day was miserable, if that makes sense. Um, and the reason why I'm talking about this is because what also happened during this fraud time is that we had a lot of patients and clients who didn't want to follow the rules. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of organizations and programs they changed their programming to adjust to these needs, such as co-ed programs, smoking, phones, um, you know, passes, because when I was in a program, I was in a very intensive outpatient program, and I wore an alcohol and a GPS tracking monitor for 6 months. So I couldn't wear certain colognes, obviously I couldn't go to a bar, but I had to follow the rules. I had to get a job. I had to go to my programming. I had to go to my AA meetings. I had to be accountable because I put myself in these situations. But during some moments, growing up, when I didn't have my way, I threw a fit. And that's what happened with a lot of these programs during this fraud time. And you have legitimate programming, legitimate programs that were out there that were thrown under the bus because the patient didn't get their way, if that makes sense. So they threw the organization under the bus and they, unfortunately called Access and reported them as fraud. Um, and that was just very unfortunate. So there's a lot of that going on as well. I just wanted to, again, give you a lens and a perspective of what happened, what could happen, what possibly happened, um, but also really coming from an addict and an alcoholic's point of view as well. And we have a lot of success stories, a lot of um, uh, uh, clients who are still sober today, and I still am in contact with them. They call me up every once in a while, and they reach me out on social media. Hey, I'm still sober. What are you doing? Where's the next talking circle? Where's this? And and they're the ones that followed the rules. They're the ones that really wanted it for themselves, and they were ready to be sober. You know, um, it being again being who I was back then. I'm pretty sure if I tried to sober up during this time, I probably would have followed a lot of what the fraudulent organizations were doing. Another thing that they were doing was they were recruiting uh, Native Americans who were still in their active addiction, uh, providing them with more alcohol, providing them with more drugs, but also giving them an incentive on top of that, an extra $100, 200 here, $200 per head to pull people from the street or pull people from other organizations into their organization. Um, and it's just very unfortunate. And I probably, if I was in my addiction, I probably would have done the same thing, you know. Um, and it's just very unfortunate that a lot of that stuff happened. Um, a lot of the inside things that we were witnessing, and we tried our best to do a lot of prevention. We tried our best to intervene, um, and getting good counselors, good case managers, good BHTs, everybody to help support clients, but they have rights too. That's the other part, that I don't think that was really addressed out there as well during this time, is that patients have rights. They have a right to stay, but they also have a right to leave. And when they walk out on their own awareness, it is documented that they left without, a provider's approval. And, you know, I think that accountability right there, it wasn't mentioned as well, you know. Um, and throughout all of this, there's a lot of organizations that were hit. Um, but with you know I get emotional about this stuff, so I apologize. Um, it's because I have a lot of family and I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of people that I work side by side with, and a lot of us are struggling right now because how this fraud impacted us. A lot of us really got into this field, knowing and understanding that this is not for everybody. you know when you bring in our culture, there's myself, from being incarcerated to dancing, my culture saved my life. And the reason why I'm on here today and talking with Kim about what I've seen and witnessed And what people aren't really talking about is the patients that were coming in. There was a lot of female patients that came into our care who were in hiding, who had different names, who didn't want to be found because of domestic violence issues. And a lot of them were carrying children because of rape, because of sex trafficking, you know, and we tried our best to help them. And this fraud impacted now where's the resources? Our resources were cut immediately off, and it impacted severely, not only, alcoholics or drug addicts, but family members, um, in all categories, from from a baby in a womb up to our elderly. You know, everybody was impacted. And these are the things that a lot of people aren't discussing, and this, which is why I wanted to discuss this, because Kim and I had a very deep discussion about this. And you know, it's unfortunate, when you have people like myself who are very, wanting to help people, but sometimes maybe this field isn't for us, you know. Even with doctors, this is one of the things I also do. I also teach with, I also help preceptors with providers, and I talk with them. And, a lot of us get into this field because of our own, either own past traumas, or because we want to make a difference, or, something meaningful happened to us is the reason why we're in this field. But some of us have to take the accountability that maybe that trauma is still in there. Maybe that whatever happened to us is still in there, and we're affecting our patients. We can still be in this field, but maybe not be in the front end, but maybe be in the back end. I think that also needs to be addressed as well, because I think we've done more harm than good, uh, because we put a lot of people who are very, very early in their recovery to help other people. There's a difference between sponsoring, but also working in this field. Working in this field, you hear these stories, and I'm pretty sure with, the fourth trimester and everything that Kim and Amanda do, they hear these stories. Mental illness, the lack of spirituality, uh, the lack of love in their family, and we have a lot of mothers and fathers who are raising their children on their own, and we need that help. And you know having that impact and seeing that firsthand in facilities where you have a person who's homeless, or who has somebody who found out they have cancer because they've been out on the street so long. Those that impacts you, that affects you. You know, these are the things that a lot of people don't discuss, and that's why our culture is so important. And that's why, I truly believe in, having our culture there to help us, and help us mend and heal. We also need our counselors. We also need people who know how to see and read our body language, and see how we're responding. We need our counselors. We need our clinical directors. We need our breastfeeding advocates. We need our liaisons. We need our outreach. But everybody and anybody that's in this field, we need to come together. Um, because we need to collaborate, you know, to protect, patient welfare, and prevent this fraud. And, you know, we need to structure those partnerships and share those successful data sharing models, and suggest framework, and have these meetings, these heart to heart meetings. And it starts from there. And some of the things that, I watched and I've seen where there was a lot of split as well. It seemed like there was this sober group here or this sober group there, and people were bickering with each other when the overall goal is to keep each other sober, to help each other. And I seen a lot of that too, you know. So right now, what I do today, with the experiences that I've seen, I do volunteer currently with the um, prison systems. I work closely with the chaplains with the reentry programs. I meet with them once a month, and I try to get there as more often as I can. I'm currently getting into the juvenile center as well. I work closely with Kim and what she does, but I also work, volunteer with the urban programming with the Urban Indian Coalition of Arizona as well. Mhm. And try to teach as much as I can and share as much as I can about what happened so we can learn and move on from this. I know a lot of tribal leaders are asking a lot of questions, asking what happened. They're asking, the referral systems. It's not the blame game, it's just what happened. I'm helping them learn how to ask those questions, asking how to, get those bridges put back together because there's this whole fraud thing really it put a barrier between the distrust between tribes and private companies, tribes and nonprofits, um, and especially people who work in this field, and um, but we can do it. We're very vigilant people. We're strong-minded. Our culture is there, and we have strong people, like Jerry, who's out there doing all the wonderful things that she does with NAFA and all the stuff that wonderful things that Al Puli does, and I believe Will Bridie, he is here too. Mr. Don Coy, he lives here in the valley. There's a lot of elders that we need to reach out to, you know, and but the biggest things for us to really, these are the things that I highly recommend for healthcare providers, tribal leaders, patients, um, to promote not only for ourselves, but to really support each other. Um, and we got to move on from this to not move away from it, but to learn from what happened and be that voice towards people who don't really want to hear this, because this happens to our family. This happened to our people, and it not only affects me, but it affects my kids. It affects your family. It affects, our emotions. It affects our spirituality, and that's all I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to point fingers. But I think all of us are accountable for what happened in a sense. But the people that really committed the fraud, you know, it's just unfortunate that what they did. You know, I hope Creator forgives them. You know, and the other thing I also wanted to talk about as well is real quickly is that a lot of us who are in this field, we were so focused on the recovery and the actual implementation of the programming. We weren't focused on the owners of the company. And the owners of the company are the ones that actually, you know, committed the fraud, right? So just a little tip here. There's two other schemes that are going on right now. One of the new schemes is is the third party billing. And what that means is they use an outside billing source for their organization. So the third party billing company, which is not part of the organization, all of these providers that were on the fraud list or that committed fraud, they're coming together and utilizing these third party billing services to bill for this again. It's kind of, disappointing that that's going on as well. And then there's another one that's going on as well, is where they're claiming to be an all integrated program when all they're doing is just doing billing services for behavioral health and trying to bill it for that way as well. So those are the two new schemes that are coming about. So it's just unfortunate that, just keeping a lookout. So my biggest thing for you, let your case managers know, let your outreach programming know, let your organizations know if you are going to partner up with another organization or get referrals, ask them those questions. Who's your bill? Do you guys bill in-house? If they're not billing in-house, then ask them who's the company that you're using to bill and who's on the list of that billing company. And you'll be surprised of which providers are on these billing lists as well. So that's another scheme that's going on. Um, yeah, so again, the overall presentation of this with everything, honestly, is communication. Communication is key here. When we get our tribal leaders, our healthcare system, our judicial system, our community, our patients, and getting them all together, because I've seen it happen. I've seen a provider, a probation officer, a judge, a doctor, a psych nurse, a traditional counselor, a clinical director, the CEO, the house manager sitting at one table for one client. I've seen it happen, and with utilizing that, what we found out with those couple of times that I've witnessed this, we found misdiagnosis of bipolar. And how we found that out was we used culture. And we used culture. We brought out the information that needed to come out. And then our provider was right there, like they pulled him off the bipolar medication because everybody was talking to one patient. You know, that's what needs to happen. We need to bring in our tribal leaders and we need to bring everybody at the table and we need to start talking about one patient. It might not take, it might take a long time to get there, but it is doable, you know. And, just my love and for everybody out there who's doing everything that they can for their community. My heart's with you. I'm right there with you. I'm also in the same boat as well, and we all got impacted, you know. I tried to open up my own facility, but I'm not on the fraud list. I'm not on the approved list. Just my license is just pending. My company, my clinic is just pending because the moratorium is still in place. And I know a lot of legitimate providers that were thrown under the bus that should have not been thrown under the bus, and they lost their businesses. It's just unfortunate, Um, but those that did get closed because they got caught, I'm glad they got caught, you know. But I hope the people that work for them, I hope they find jobs, I hope they get the income that they need, for themselves. And it's been a year. It's been a whole year since my clinic closed. But I pulled myself a little away from it for a little bit. But now I'm getting back into it because I went through my little depression as well because I wasn't feeling very well because this impacted me because it's what I do. I love my people. Sorry to get emotional, but that's it's what I do, and I'm still in the fight, and I hope you are too, and like it says here, healing doesn't mean the damage never existed, and it means the damage no longer controls our lives. And with this fraud, it doesn't control us; it just makes us stronger, and it brings us a lot more together. So. So that's my presentation, for today, and thank you guys for listening, and kind of seeing it from a little bit of different perspective and different lenses of somebody who works in this field, who witnessed the referrals, who witnessed the business development side, but also witnessed the clinical side, but also from the insurance side, but also from a patient's perspective as well. Um, the lens, I hope, lets you see and have that understanding, that empathy towards people who were really affected by this, and that's obviously the patients themselves, but the families, our community, and those who are in this field, who are trying to make a difference. So yeah, thank you, Kim, for allowing me to share today.
Thank you, Alan, for that rich conversation. I really, um, realize some of that, like you said, no one really talks about some of these things that happen, especially with moms carrying babies, and the trafficking, all the things that you probably saw were really hard. And I think that kind of got to me. But this conversation is really important to have. And the reason why I wanted this conversation is because I am the co-chair for the Maternal Mortality Review of Arizona, the committee. And a lot of this conversation comes up when we're talking about maternal death among our Native women. And a lot of this information, when we're talking about cases, uh, are not very clear in what we see as Native people, what has happened in our communities, the unjust of the healthcare system, even with this happening with our mothers in recovery. Um, we wanted to share this so that other people can come to this conversation, understand what we are saying as lived experience people, or we know somebody that it affected to, like Amanda stated that her niece and nephew's father passed due to the negligence of being housed in these facilities, that maybe there would have been a better outcome. So I'm hoping that other people will hear this recording. And again, this information is really important. I mean, my friend Angie is on the call, and she commented on here that she didn't know this was happening. And it's really sad that we have this occurring in our communities. But thank you, Alan. I want to leave it up to um, whoever wants to share, and I'm gonna open this up to Amanda if she has something to share or ask, or yeah.
Yeah, everything that you shared just made me think about, well, first of all, thank you for sharing this information. It's very important. Um, and it makes me think about my niece and my nephew's late father. He was he was no longer with my sister, but he was trying to get his life together just so that he could have time with his kids, so that he could fix himself for his kids. And then we found out last summer that his family was looking for him for, I think it was like 2 months, and then he heard about these sober living homes, and then it sounds like they just picked them up, and then nobody knew where he was, and then but he did make it home. Um, and then we do know that he had like chronic high blood pressure and stuff. That was before that, but we think that he just didn't he wasn't able to attend his regular medical appointments and everything. And then by the time he made it home, um, those issues, his health issues, had really become severe, and he ended up passing on from cardiac arrest. Like he passed away in his sleep. And then we also realized, like during when we were attending his family's the funeral meetings, we heard about his brother, and his brother is now, from what we understand, is that he is permanently disabled due to whatever he went through there. So that's, and then when it's reflective, me and my colleague Diley Lister, we've been attending the Tri-Agency Council meetings, which is one of them is the Arizona Access Tribal Consultation meetings. Monday we attended the May consultation meeting, and as well as the one just recently in White River. And there again, they talk about Arizona Access talks about how they're working on, fixing these things. And one of the more vocal advocates who has been advocating for the tribes is White Mountain Apache's vice president, our vice chairman, Jerome Casey. He's been very, very vocal about it. And the times that we've been attending those meetings, and he's really good at holding Access accountable. So he's been attending these meetings and asking for updates from like what they had mentioned from the previous meetings. And one of the things that he asked is what type of maybe legislation or what's going to happen to hold them accountable, because a lot of our tribal relatives within Arizona, even New Mexico, you know, are they going to be held accountable for the ones who have passed? So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about, like in that, being in those spaces, and but also because of the fraud, the reason why myself and Adiley have been attending these meetings is basically because of the Arizona Access doula reimbursement benefit, and just advocating to make it more accessible for our tribal, basically for tribes, the 22 tribes of Arizona, and then also just making it easier for doulas, Indigenous doulas, to bill, especially within rural communities. But from what we gather,